Pete, what have you got to show me?
So this is Seller of Weapons. It's a game in which players become low-level arms dealers in Afghanistan, trying to make a stack of cash and gain as much reputation as they can.
Okay. What's it based on?
So it's based on A Distant Plane, Volume 3 of the Coin series by Brian Train and Volko Ruhnke, which represents the ongoing Taliban insurgency in the country.
Nice. Why did you pick this?
So we wanted something that was relevant at the moment, that people would be familiar with, but that which you could put a nice new twist on and kind of warp the existing systems and take it in a new and exciting direction.
So this is a period of a messy insurgent conflict.
Yeah, so the board at the moment is set up to represent approximately 2009, as per one of the scenarios in A Distant Plane, so it'll be familiar with players of that game. And yeah, it's a really kind of chaotic period where you've got four different factions vying for control of various territory in the country. So you've got the government forces, the Afghan government, the coalition, US-led allies, warlord factions, and you've got the Taliban.
Great. So plenty of opportunities for our arms dealers. Go in at a low level and make some profits.
Yeah.
Great. Can you show us the parts of the game?
Yep, so I'll start over here with the item deck. So this represents various different things that you can buy with a view to then selling into the four factions on the board. If I just take some out and start seeding the market just down here, you can see there's different types of card. They're not all necessarily guns, but they could be related to carrying out military operations in some way. Each of these cards have different features on them. You can see, for example, this heavy machine gun ammunition card has a price of 2 up in the top left. It has an effect when it's delivered to the factions on the board of adding a unit onto that board. It has an effect on the combat. You then have prices, which are listed coalition, government, Taliban, and warlord. And then there's a courier price, which is a slightly different way of selling. If you are strapped for cash, you can run that good for another person as a third party. At the bottom, you can see who's interested in this good. So this is actually something that anybody will buy. But for example, this infrastructure is something only the coalition and the government are interested in. We also have 10 special item cards here. So for example, there's a BMP2. These are seeded into the bottom of the item deck at the start of the game, and they represent really high value items that certain people are going to be looking for. They get unlocked towards the end of the game, and they have quite a big effect as well.
So items for sale. Who
Yep.
do we sell it to?
So to sell, you need to go to one of the factions on the board, but first you actually need to go through an intermediary. So over here we have the contact market and the contact deck. So again, I'll just seed the market here. There are 4 cards in each market. So these are the people that are available to establish as a contact. You can see we've got a couple of Taliban here. There's another Taliban at the top, funnily enough. Sorry, that's a tribal fighter. They're a warlord piece. I misread that. And then you've got a coalition NCO here. So you can buy these cards, put them into your own player tableau, and then they belong to you. So if, for example, you were to buy this Taliban sympathizer, you'd put them up in your tableau. And if I were the red player, I'd then put a contact marker on them to represent that they are mine. And I place them on the board in a location which has Taliban pieces and which is within range of my initial depot, which I'll show you in a minute.
Right, so we got items. We've got contacts to arrange a sale. How do we get them? The goods.
So up here, we've got a transport pool of 10 cards representing different smugglers, different routes that you can use. They have a cost, which is also their carrying capacity. So these mule trains, for example, they can only go a distance of 1, carrying 1 card, whereas a truck fleet has a distance of 2 and can carry up to 2 cards. The private helicopter is the best because it's 3 and 3. So all cards cost 1 to carry. And then there's also value here as to how many of these goods the contact is going to be able to receive, which is also the price of that card. So the Taliban commander here is able to process 2 cards in 1 trade, whereas everybody else on this list is only able to process 1.
It's great. Maybe by way of introducing the board, you could take us through the initial setup.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing you do is you randomize where you set up your initial depot. So you do that by rolling 2 dice. There's a chart that tells you how to do this. In this case, 1 to 3 is northern, and then you go 1, 2, 3. So it'll be Faryab here. So the red player would take their depot piece, which represents their starting position, and it's from where they'll carry out all their trades, and you place that in Faryab. If they're playing against the yellow player, you roll again. We've got another northerner, and they're going to be in Baghdis. So these guys are going to be right on top of each other from the start. So there should be a lot of competition there.
That's great. And can you take us through the turn structure?
Yep, so the turn structure is very, very simple. Each turn, the phasing player takes 2 actions. If they can't take an action, they have to pass, but you have to take 2 actions if you can. You start off with 10 cash. That's a key resource to allow you to buy cards and then to use them. And you also have reputation, which is marked by these knight pieces over here on the left-hand side. Reputation is your victory points. One of the victory conditions of the game is to get to 30 victory points, 30 reputation. When you hit that, you win the game. Otherwise, the game ends when either the item deck or the contact deck runs dry and you can no longer draw from it.
Okay, so let's have a look if I understand it correctly. So select items.
Yep.
And contacts. These go on your tableau.
Yep.
And then you're ready to carry out a turn.
You would need a transport card to be able to make a trade. Right. There's a menu of actions you can choose from. So you can either buy any number of items, you can buy any number of contact cards, you can buy a single transport card, you can activate a card. So the contact cards have different actions that you can activate and use in your turn. You can connect a trade, or you can do a courier action.
So you can trade to the range you can reach from your depot based on the transport you've got.
Yeah.
And you can sell according to the contact you've got.
Yeah.
And the item can either be bought and traded by yourself or couriered.
Yes.
That's great. So just revise, how do we win?
So you're aiming to get 30 reputation. And the tiebreaker is whoever's got the most cash.
So that explains how I would play as a player, but how do I compete? How do I oppose the other player?
So the actions that you get on the different contact cards, for example, you can see this coalition NCO. If I just take him out, you can see if you were to activate them on a different player's turn, so when they are the phasing player, and their route when they're trying to trade passes through the contact's province, and the item cards they're trying to trade include spare parts or any weapons, then you add 2 to the risk factor of that trade. So the risk factor is calculated by looking at the number of enemy pieces compared to the contact that you're trading into. So for example, if you're trading to the Taliban in this base here, or Afghanistan, you count up the number of enemy pieces, which is 4. In this case, there's a risk factor of 4. If you then flowed into Ghazni here, you'd have to add these additional 6 pieces. So the risk factor would be 10. That would be quite a high risk, because the way you deal with that risk factor is you roll 2d6 and you're aiming to roll over the number that you had. So if here, for example, we've got 9, that would fail. Activating the coalition NCO, however, allows you to add 2 risk factor as well. So by activating that card, rotating it, you can make it more risky if there were the coalition NCO in either of those 2 spaces.
So you showed us the forces on the board, and how do those evolve throughout the game?
So when you deliver your cards in, your item cards, they all have an impact. So for example, this heavy machine gun ammunition will add a unit to the faction receiving that card. And then if they attack, which is done according to a set of logical rules, then they'll get -1 DRM on their attack. The combat rules are exactly the same as a distant plane. So guerrilla attacks and government attacks are handled in the same way.
That's great. Well, thank you for going through that in 10 minutes, Pete.
Well, thank you for having me. Okay.
Okay.
We're under time.